Okay, that time of the week. Actually, we're a couple days late. Welcome to another edition of Dallas Cowboys Overtime here on StarTelegram.com. I am Fort Worth Star Telegram sports columnist Mac Engel. A beautiful gentleman on the other side of the screen is the pride of the University of Texas and a big fan of Steve Sarkisian. He is Mr. Clarence E. Hill Jr. joining us for another episode of Cowboys Overtime, sponsored by great people at Window Nation. Thank you, Window Nation. And thank you for being patient with us this week because it is the bye week and we forgot that we had to do this anyways. Just full transparency. Clarence, before we get into the state of the Dallas Cowboys, we need a little bit of the state of the University of Texas football team that is getting ready to play not this week, but next week against TCU. Where are you in your love-hate relationship with all thing Longhorns football?
Ooh, I'm at that. I'm on the brink here. I'm almost. It's funny because I was just thinking about the other day, and as much as I was consuming UT stuff after they beat OU and all this other stuff that after Oklahoma State and the bye week last week, I have not read anything about it. It's like I'm almost off the. They have to win the last 4 games. They really. Who says they're not going to? They can. Right here, they should be undefeated, but they have to win their last. They really to really show they've turned the corner. How about through their last 4? They really need to show something. They have a tough last 4 stretch: K-State, Baylor, Kansas, and TCU.
They're going to beat TCU.
Well, I'm just saying if they beat. But they also need to show they can win on the road, and that's why this week's important. These games are winnable. All these games have been winnable for Texas. Look at even going back to Alabama, Texas Tech on the road, Oklahoma State on the road. I mean, these games are winnable, but until you win, until you do something, it's always the same thing. Last year, it was we didn't have any players, and now they're young.
You're right. It's always something.
It's always something.
I could see them going 3-1, and they're going to beat Kansas. I could see them going 3-1 in this stretch. I could see them going 1-3 in this stretch.
Right. That's the thing, because you don't know. And one thing I like about TCU, and we'll get to the Cowboys, TCU has been resilient. Usually we're from the Cowboys. They've taken hits. They haven't been great, but they get better as the game goes on, and they're usually the better team at the end of the game. Texas has looked good early, but when they get punched in the mouth sometimes, especially on the road, they have not responded. And they have not done that since Sark has been. Every one of their Big 12 losses, they've had leads and they blow them.
That's amazing.
And they don't win on the road. And so you have to show that you can respond. TCU's been resilient. Their defense is not perfect, but they respond. And their offense, they get better. Texas offense does not get better in the fourth quarter.
No, and TCU's defense, which is what the College Football Playoff Committee punished them for, they've been better in the second half. They've fallen behind and they come back in the second half. They've been good in games. And, obviously
that's the mark of a good team. You get better as the game goes on. You show up when it matters. And TCU has done that, and Texas has not.
Nope. It'll be fun to watch here the last month of the Big 12's regular season. The NFL's regular season has 2 more months. And the Dallas Cowboys are currently at the bye. And there's a lot of good reasons to feel good about this Dallas Cowboys team at the bye week. Number one, they're 6-2, second in the NFC. But Clarence, they talked about it after the big win against the Chicago Bears, a blowout win against the Chicago Bears. They feel like this bye after the 8th game of the regular season comes at the absolute perfect time. You don't get any time. You don't get any input on when you get the bye. They feel like right now this is the perfect time for the bye. Why is that?
Let's just start out with them feeling good, and they should feel good. If someone would have told you before the season, even with a healthy Dak Prescott, that you're going to be 6-2 after 8 games, going through what on paper looked like your toughest stretch of the season with Tampa Bay, with the 2 Super Bowl combatants in Cincinnati and the Rams, a game at Philadelphia, through your first 8 games, you'd have took it in a heartbeat.
Oh.
Now I'm taking
it. Clarence, would you have believed it?
I was just saying I didn't. Yeah. So now I'm telling you, they're 6-2. They didn't have Dak Prescott for 5 games. Okay, they started a rookie left tackle. They've been without their receiving core for the first 3 games. You'd have Michael Gallup. You're going to get help back there, and Dak Prescott's going to get better. Offense is going to get better. You still have room to improve, and you're 6-2. Yeah, they're feeling good at the bye at 6-2. They couldn't have dreamed of this scenario where they're 6-2 at the bye with their best defense, with an improving offense. So yeah, you feel good. And yeah, the bye comes at a great time for the Cowboys. Just understand this: you didn't have Ezekiel Elliott last week for the game against the Chicago Bears. Tyron Smith, who's been out all season, is going to come back. The offense, again, has a chance to continue to improve. You didn't play last week without Noah Brown, who was your second best receiver for much of the season. Malik Hooker, your starting safety, has been your best tackler, didn't play last week in the last game against the Bears. Those guys have a chance to get healthy. Again, you got guys that are beaten up. Guys get a chance to take some load off your body at the perfect midpoint of the season. Some people have to buy earlier, some people have to buy earlier. Later, the Cowboys got to buy right in the middle of the season so they can recharge and get refreshed for the final 2 months. So it was a great time to have the buy as well.
The NFL's trade deadline was this week. We saw a handful of teams make some moves ostensibly to get better. Other teams made moves just to dump guys to get some value, some draft pick in return. The Dallas Cowboys elected to do nothing other than to cut former second-round draft pick Tristan Hill. A little of a disappointment for a lot of different reasons. I like the guy a lot. I thought he showed some flashes. They held him out last week's game to basically protect him. They couldn't find a trade partner, so they cut Tristan Hill. There were some conversations between the Houston Texans and the Dallas Cowboys about wide receiver Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks is on the hook for an $18 million salary. Dallas Cowboys said no. Clarence, was that potential acquisition in any way, shape, or form, the fact they even had the conversation admitting that they need help at the wide receiver position because they let Amari Cooper go in the offseason?
Yeah, they know they need help. We've talked about. I talked to Stephen Jones on Wednesday at AT&T Stadium. They know that they need help at wide receiver. They're hoping again that James Washington comes back. They're hoping that Jalen Tolbert comes back. So they're gonna Jalen Tolbert, the rookie third round pick, who's been a disappointment, continues to develop. But yeah, they need help. They admit as much, and I don't think that they believe that they can still get help. Whether it's OBJ or whether it's Brandon getting cut, at some point by the Texans, that they can add something to the roster. It was more about his salary for next year, and they couldn't get it done. But I wouldn't have paid him $18 million guaranteed his contract. He's a nice player, be a nice fit, but I'm not guaranteeing him $18 million. And they were hoping the Texans would take some of that money. But yeah, it's the Cowboys did get Jonathan Hankins last week to help show up their run defense. So they did make a small trade. The Cowboys like their team. They were looking for a player to put them over the top. They can still compete as is. They're still as good as anyone else as is. They were looking for something that would put them over the top, and a potential receiver would do that because if you look at this roster, that's where the weak link is right now. And this is the first time since 1973 that the Cowboys have not had a 100-yard receiver through the first 8 games of the season. That's crazy.
That is insane. So you mentioned James Washington. He was the veteran free agent they signed in the offseason. Hurts his foot in training camp. Clarence, when's he going to be?
He should be back at some point in November. They're going to start his practice window. He's on injury reserve. He should be back at some point mid to late November.
What about Tyron Smith, the all-pro left tackle? He got hurt in training camp. They moved
Tyron Smith will start. Tyron Smith will return at some point in December.
Okay.
It's a good problem to have. You throw him back out there, you kick, Tyler Smith inside. There are times when you had no answers at backup tackle. You had no answers of what we're going to get the depth on offensive line. Now it looks like you have good depth. You got Tyron Smith, you got Jason Peters. What do you do with those guys when you got Connor McGovern and Tyler Smith starting and looking solid, but has a chance to upgrade for the playoffs? You do it.
Well, Clarence, if you would have told me they would put Jason Peters, who's one of the biggest human beings I've ever seen, at guard, a guard where you've got to be able to bend pretty good. Playing inside is a little bit easier than playing outside, and easier is relative to being an offensive lineman. But the fact that they've gotten away with Jason Peters at guard, and he's been pretty good, I think he's made a big upgrade. How is this? Or do they even – is this one of those things, Clarence, that when Tyron is eligible to come back and is clear to come back, do they just worry about it then?
Well, that's what it is. And again, it's a good problem to have. Damn, our offense is going good. Tyler Smith looked good at left tackle. Now we got this eight-time Pro Bowler coming back. What do we do with him?
Speaking of one other injured guy, we'll talk about this probably more next week, just the future of the offense. Ezekiel Elliott missed the game against Chicago with a sprained MCL. You first reported about it in the Star Telegram about 10 or 12 days ago. Zeke talked to us, and a handful of us, in the locker room after Sunday's game. He said he felt better, but he really wouldn't go so far as to say he would be ready to go against the Green Bay Packers, which is the first game after the bye week. Do you have any better indication, Clarence, if Zeke's going to be a go for the Packers game?
No, we won't know until next Wednesday. But again, the bye week is a good time. He's rested. It's not like he has is in a boot or any type of brace or anything on the knee. He's able to walk around. The swelling has gone down, and we'll see. Again, this is a long season. Whether it's next week or the week after, the fact is that it's not going to be like last year when you're playing the final 11 games with a torn ligament in your leg and do nothing to try to stabilize it and rest it so you can be ready for the long haul.
All right. Thanks a lot. Please stick around. Clarence, don't go anywhere. You actually need to stick around as well. We got a lot more to talk about here on Cowboys Overtime after this word from the great people at Window Nation.
Window Nation, the star of window replacement and proud partner of the Dallas Cowboys, can help you fill the house this season with savings. Buy 2 windows, get 2 free, and make no payments and pay no interest until 2025. Fill your house for a customized authentic Dallas Cowboys jersey while supplies last. You could even help fill the Cowboys house and win tickets to a game. Visit windownation.com/Cowboys now for details. Call 866-95-NATION. Window Nation, proud partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, thank you very much, Window Nation. Can't believe this, but it was this time about a year ago the Dallas Cowboys in 2021 were 6-2. However, they had the benefit of playing against a schedule that was built on a 6-10 record in 2020. Now we're here a year later. The Dallas Cowboys are defending NFC East champs with a 12-win season. They're 6-2 again, even though, as you mentioned at the top, they were without their starting quarterback for 5 games, and they went 4-1 with Cooper Rush as the starting quarterback. Clarence, why is 6-2 in 2022 a lot better than 6-2 in 2021?
Well, for a number of reasons. I think it's because, number one, it's because of how they got here.
Sure.
Last year, again, the Cowboys were 6-2, playing their best football. The Dak Prescott was the MVP candidate.
Yeah, right.
Okay. And they got to 6-2 after getting their butt kicked by the Denver Broncos and them putting out a blueprint on them, and things kind of went downhill from there. This year they're 6-2, led by a defense, which I think is more sustainable for success with Michael Parsons, with a proving offense coming off a blowout win going into a bye. This 6-2 feels a little better, a little more hopeful than last year's 6-2. Okay, you add in the fact that you do have a team that can improve, and you talked about last year saying that they were playing off a sorry schedule. Well, that sorry schedule included Denver and the Raiders and teams that beat them. Okay, Kansas City. This sorry schedule coming up on this team after the first place schedule, you got Jacksonville, you got Tennessee, you got Green Bay who can't play. Suddenly,
Minnesota.
you got Minnesota. We didn't know, but I'm just saying.
I know Minnesota's 6-1, 6-1 with Kirk Cousins. I'm not buying it.
No,
I know the Giants are 6-2.
Yeah, so 6-2 with a chance to improve, to get better, because you're going to get better. Dak's only played 3 games.
Yeah,
the offense is going to be better. The defense is sustainable. Michael Parsons is a cheat code. I like this 6-2 better than last year's 6-2.
I like so do I, for all the reasons that you just mentioned, because you have a better chance of sustaining success in January with a dominant pass rush. I got to say, a dominant pass rush that I thought they had last January, and they didn't, not compared to the 49ers. If you go back and watch that playoff game, the biggest reason why they couldn't beat San Francisco is because San Francisco beat them with what essentially was a 4-man rush. And when you watch the Cowboys' success, they're beating teams with a pretty straightforward defense. I mean, give Dan Quinn a lot of credit. Give the players a ton of credit. Give Micah Parsons a lot of credit. Tank Lawrence, who looks great this year, Dorrance Armstrong. Look, I know I certainly participated in the mob rule mentality against the Cowboys in the offseason that let all these guys go, like Randy Gregory. And Randy's had a nice season in Denver, but so is Dorrance Armstrong with the Dallas Cowboys. That what Micah Parsons has opened up for these guys, they've cashed in. And the same thing with Tank Lawrence. Tank has been really, really good this year. So some of these other guys. Anthony Barr has been really good. Leighton Vander Esch has had a nice comeback season. Just, last season, he looked like a guy who might get cut. And then at the very end, he came on pretty strong and he looked better. And then this season, he's been pretty solid. The safeties have been really good. Trayvon Diggs has been tremendous. I'm a big fan of Donovan Wilson. So I think if you said, well, why do I feel better about this 6-2? All of those guys on defense, plus Dan Quinn, and plus an offense that doesn't beat itself. I mean, when you have a defense that good, the trick is just don't overthink it. And one thing Dak Prescott's done since he's come back, really against the Chicago Bears more than anybody else, he didn't try to get too cute. You mentioned it a few times there at the top when he first came back. He did get a little too cute. He gets a little too over-aggressive. But if he dials that back just a little bit, well, you're looking at a much more efficient offense and an offense that can win the NFC. Okay.
Okay, good.
Let's go, because this walks into what we want to talk about, winning the NFC. Clarence, I'm looking at the NFC standings, or the NFC standings, not just NFC. Okay, I hate saying it. Why not the Cowboys? There's nobody in the NFC that scares you. I'm going to go over the teams with the records. Philadelphia is 7-0. They should scare you with the 7-0 record, including a win over the Cowboys in Cooper Rush's last start in Philadelphia a few weeks ago. I'm sorry, that game was to be had even with Cooper Rush, but Philly won the game. They deserve to win that game. Minnesota, 6-1. The Packers are 3-5. Atlanta's 4-4. Tampa Bay, with their quarterback who's having serious home issues, they're 3-5. Well, come on. The Giants are 6-2. Seattle with Geno Smith, by far and away the best story in the NFL this season. I love the Geno Smith story. I think it's great. Seattle is 5-3. San Francisco is 4-4, even though they made a big trade to get Christian McCaffrey from the Carolina Panthers. And the Rams, the defending Super Bowl champs, 3-4. Arizona with Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury making more money than they can ever count at 3-5. Dallas is 6-2. I don't want to say it because I've said it before. I'll say it. This one feels different. They can win this NFC. They can win this NFC.
And certainly the Eagles should be the favorite. They're undefeated. They're the best team. They played the best so far. But the last two Cowboys quarterbacks the Eagles beat, Cooper Rush and Ben DiNucci. The last two quarterbacks the Eagles beat, Cooper Rush and Ben DiNucci.
I forgot about Ben DiNucci slinging that pizza sideways in Philly.
But yeah, so those games are winnable. The Cowboys have to do it. It's all there in front of them. The road is clear. The road is clear. That's why there was so much talk about them making a move at the trade deadline to add to it, because the road is clear like nobody's business. No other time I've seen it. Even last year when it started out good, you still had Tampa and the Rams, still had big bad Wolves. Like, okay, the Cowboys are playing well, but that team is probably better. Now these teams with these so-called Super Bowl quarterbacks who can get it done at the end, Tampa Bay ain't no good. Aaron Rodgers ain't no good. There's no quarterbacks you fear. When the Cowboys have been knocked out, their good teams been knocked out. They've been knocked out by great quarterbacks. They've been knocked out by great teams.
Let's do this real quick. Jalen Hurts, scare you?
No.
Kirk Cousins?
No.
Aaron Rodgers?
No, because he has no help. It's funny when you have no receivers and you have no help that you're certainly not a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Well, in fairness to that, I mean, we've talked about this before, and it works both ways. There is a line. There's one thing. We have seen quarterbacks, guys in town here, and other guys all over the United States who make good players look great. And that's what the Packers were asking Aaron Rodgers to do once they let Devontae Adams go to the Raiders, right?
Right. But
are you going to tell me Mike Evans isn't help for Tom Brady?
Exactly. But the idea that, my thing is, we go back to New England. Everybody said, well, Tom Brady made those no-name receivers great. They also had the best defense in the league to go with it. It wasn't. They weren't an
they
offensive
consistently
football team.
Yep. No, they did, and it works. I mean, this is all kind of works together. But
yes.
Daniel Jones, is there anything about the Giants that scare you?
No, and the Cowboys beat the Giants by double digits with Cooper Rush
in New York.
On the road.
Seattle?
No, I mean, they're just resilient. They just somehow find a way to win.
It's worth a lot. Matt Stafford?
Matt Stafford, I mean, again,
Jimmy Garoppolo? No.
Matt Stafford's a perfect example. He had one great year. He felt right. I go back to, I think the team to worry about is the 49ers with Chris McCaffrey. I think they're a team like the Cowboys who's going to be better in the second half of the season. They already have one of the great defenses. You're not scared of their quarterback with their coach, that scheme, their running game. They really should have been in the Super Bowl last year if one of the safeties don't drop a pop-up interception, for Matt Stafford. And we wouldn't be talking about Matt Stafford being, Super Bowl champion. But that's the team that I think that has a chance to really grow.
So do I. And I think that team could give the Cowboys trouble for the exact reason
as they did last year.
Yeah. Last thing we're going to talk about here on Cowboys Overtime. You mentioned Odell Beckham Jr. He's still out there. The Cowboys have certainly quietly said wide receiver is a position they probably would like to upgrade. I'm sure they would like to look at what James Washington can do for them. I'm not really that terribly optimistic. Odell Beckham made a big difference for the Rams last season. And if you go back and watch that Super Bowl game, he was having his way, and the Rams offense looked a lot different when he was playing against the Bengals in that Super Bowl, and they changed a lot after he went out. He's going to be eligible to come back here pretty soon. Do you think the Cowboys will make a run at him?
I think he's a talking point. From my understanding, Odell still wants big money, and just talking to people, he'd be interested in the Cowboys, and the Cowboys would be open that, you want to bring that person out of this locker room. You only do that because you have a chance to win. But, for him, he should be worried about the money he gets in free agency next year instead of worried about his money now. He still wants Odell Beckham money. He's not going to get Odell Beckham money, but there are teams that still need help at receiver, including the Rams, including the Cowboys, including Green Bay, who may want to make a run. So there are going to be some suitors out there. It depends on how all that falls out. But I think Odell Beckham, he's on the table.
Okay, one last quick thing. It's the bye week. Cowboys obviously are off. You will be watching your game of choice. How do you feel about your Longhorns against the Kansas State Wildcats?
The little apple, man. We're going to run through Manhattan like King Kong.
You do realize Kansas State has a history with Texas.
Oh, I know. I know. And Texas don't win on the road. Can I show some false confidence? Just let me be. Can I show some confidence?
Well, I'm telling you, this is what I'm telling you right now. TCU is going to go down there next week. TCU is going to win against Texas Tech on Saturday in Fort Worth. And then they're going to go down to Austin, and Gary Patterson's going to get his revenge.
Well,
and they're going
to
beat the Horned.
But I think that Texas needs to win this week to make that matter. Because there will be a lot of this. Huh?
Do you think they'll check out if they lose this game? Do you think
I just think there'll be a lot of disillusionment because, you win this week, you have a chance to still stay in the race for the Big 12 title. You have a lot of hope that you can run the table because you got Baylor and TCU at home, and you got another road game at Kansas. There's a lot of optimism that everything is still there for the taking if they can get this done this week. Again, they need to learn. They need to win a road game. They need to win a true road game. And Kansas State, which came off this blowout win over Oklahoma State, that won't be easy pickings, but Texas needs to get it done.
All right. Should be fun to watch. Clarence, always fun to talk Cowboys and football with you. Have a great weekend. I want to thank the great people of Window Nation for being with us, not only this week, but every week. For all of your Dallas Cowboys coverage needs, be sure to check us out on StarTelegram.com. We will catch you on Cowboys Overtime next week.